Hey everybody, how's it going? IntoWeapons back again with you. We got the FIME VEPR AK-47-11 out again for you today. This will be the third video we've done on this particular rifle, and this is one solid rifle. We really like this. First video we did an overview and shooting portion and kind of a review process, and it operated flawlessly. We were really impressed with the results. It was a real nice rifle, especially for the price and the features that you're getting. Second video, we kind of did a follow-up on the different stock, the aftermarket stock that we put on this guy from its original Warsaw length, US-made polymer stock. It was a little bit short for us, and now we got on it, as you can see, an expandable AR style type of stock on there. Works really well. Today we're going to go ahead and cover the trigger on this guy. As you probably remember, one of my complaints from the original video was that the trigger does have a lot of problems, or not really problems, it's just not as comfortable as a standard Tapco G2 or what you would normally find in an AKM on the market today. I believe it was an Arsenal style trigger made by them possibly, but it had a lot of take up. It didn't have a very good breaking point, and then the reset on it was a little sloppy as well. So overall we weren't really too excited about the trigger, so that was one of the upgrades that he wanted to do on this. And what he found was from ALG Defense, they have this AKT Trigger out there, and I know what he had mentioned is a lot of people on the internet were wondering if that would be a direct drop-in replacement for the FIME VEPR that we have here, and I'm happy to report that it is. You do not need to make any special modifications out of the package when you buy that specific trigger. It does drop right in there, fits very nicely, and I didn't expect a whole lot of difference between the stock trigger, even off a standard AKM, and this particular trigger from ALG Defense. That was the first time I got to play around with it, and I tell you guys that this is a great trigger. It's just really smooth. It's got just a really nice breaking point, a really good reset on it, and it just amazing trigger on it. We've been pulling some test weights on it, and it's running about 2 pounds 9 ounces, and the second pull was 2 pounds 10 ounces, so it's very consistent. And it does come with a couple options here where you're able to add additional weight on there, because it is a light trigger if you're wanting to. So we'll go ahead and maybe get it down on the bench here real quick before we get it out to the range and do some test firing with it. But we'll get on the bench here, break it down so you can kind of see the inside of the fire control group and some of the things that come along with it, and a couple notes that we found as well as he was doing the installation. Okay, so we got the FIME VEPR on the bench here with the ALG Defense AKT Trigger. AK Trigger essentially what that stands for. We wanted to give you guys kind of a close-up of that. We'll go ahead and break it down and show you the inside, the fire control group as it sits in the receiver. Again, it was a direct drop-in replacement, so there was no modification needed, which was really nice. I guess there was a couple questions on if that would work with the FIME VEPR here. But I guess the ALG Defense Trigger is acceptable and universal through many different variants on the market, including the WASR brand, where it does not need any type of modifications. It runs about $50. I wanted to mention that originally, guys. So it is a fairly, a little bit more, I should say, expensive than what you'll find as far as even a Tapco G2 trigger. But the improvements that it makes and the overall performance, even just from me kind of playing around with it here for a couple minutes, I can tell you it's well worth that extra money. Awesome trigger. It is all steel. There isn't any plastic involved with it, which is really nice. One thing I did want to mention before we started out is they did send along this spring here, as well as a couple pins, and these were the only extra parts that they sent along with it, and they're sometimes not needed. These are optional parts, and what this particular spring will do here is wrap around the retaining pin here that runs in for the trigger, and that will give you some extra pull weight on there, so it won't be as light of a trigger. And maybe what we'll do is a follow-up video later on, maybe next week or the following week, on this particular spring and how much weight that actually adds to it. Supposedly it's between 9 and 10 ounces if I'm not mistaken. 10 and 14. 10 and 14 ounces, okay. And then we have a couple pins here, and what these pins are for is that they did notice that there was some safety issues with the safety lever essentially, and this pin will allow you to set into a little retaining hole that's in there, and we'll point that out when we get it broken down. But what you need to do is kind of set that in there and then file that down to a particular point where it will not allow you to fire this rifle or have any kind of a discharge when the safety lever is in the upwards position. So that's kind of what these pins are for, and they did send along really good instructions, I should mention, not only on those pins and what they're used for and how to install them, but as well as just general instructions on the installation of the ALG Defense AKT trigger. So that's really nice that they have some really good instructions included with that. You don't have to try to figure that out yourself, especially when you got a couple extra pieces that come along, kind of throws you through a whip. So let's go ahead and break it down for you guys and kind of show you what it comes with here in the rifle as it sits in there in the receiver. And one thing he did notice, and it kind of was I didn't really notice it off the bat, but he mentioned it to me, was that it really cleans up the action a lot. There is absolutely zero hang up on this hammer as you're pulling that bolt carrier back through the rails here and then back forward. It really rides through that entire action very smoothly, and that hammer is formatted and profiled really well for that fact. So as you can take a look in there, guys, it's not much different than what you'll find in a standard fire control group for an AKM. Looks very similar, I'm sure, to many of you. And then in the bottom here, I'm going to try to point this out with my finger, but in the back, right in front of the safety selector lever there, you'll notice is that's hole there, and that's where one of these pins will actually sit in there. It is a fit pin, so as you tap that into that hole, it kind of sets itself in there. You won't need to worry about it coming out, evidently. And then you kind of need to adjust the size of that, and they did provide specific instructions on the size that you kind of need. But that, again, just improves that safety if you have any of those issues. This particular rifle did not have that issue. With the safety up, it did not allow it to fire. But it is a very light trigger, so that is something you want to keep in mind, and that you have a very safe firearm when you replace a fire control group. And then, as you can notice here, again, we have the profiling of the hammer. We have the hook there that is just kind of barely clawing on there, and that's really kind of what's giving you your really lightweight pull there. As you can see, it's a single hook, and as I pull up, it releases, and you can see it doesn't take much there. You really don't even know what's happening. And you just pull up, and it releases it forward. I did ask that he kind of watch to see if we have any deformation of the bolt carrier. As some of you know, some of those are on the Yugo variants especially, you'll have some of that deformation of the end of the bolt carrier where the hammer hits, or that we don't have any deformation of the hammer itself, being that one of the steels is harder than the other. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that and give you guys an update if we have any issues like that. And overall, again, I really like the trigger. So we'll get out in the range, guys, and we'll get some rounds through it and see how it operates. Alright, real quickly before we head out on the range, guys, we're actually going to do a pull weight on this to kind of give you an idea of the pull weight itself, as well as the consistency between the different pulls. Again, prior we had 2.9, 2.10, but let's see if we get our first pull on the camera here. And what are we reading at? 3.1. So again, really close to that high 2, really low 3. We'll go ahead and get a second pull on this and see what we get. And we are at 2 pounds and 15.2 ounces, so higher 2. And that give you an idea of the consistency between them. So we'll get her on the range and give her a test. Alright, we got the ALG Defense AKT Trigger and the FIME VEPR. We're going to put some rounds through it and test it out, see what we like on it, and see how well she runs. Ran flawlessly, didn't have any issues, and I tell you, that is one improvement over any standard trigger that you'll find in any AKM, as well as maybe any polished or job done on any Tapco G2 trigger that I've ever done personally. So for $50, that's a hell of a buy right there. I tell you what, guys, it's a definite improvement over any AK trigger you'll find. All right, we got it set up at 25 yards. We'll check some accuracy that we can get out of it. Alright, so we got a number of rounds through this ALG Defense AKT Trigger. Works really nice, no malfunctions, good groupings. Overall, it performed really well. I really like it, guys. For 50 bucks, you certainly can't go wrong. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, let me know. Until next time, take her easy. So we'll go ahead and do that. That's just amateur. Did you see that?
Yeah, that looked bad.
It was